Hi, thanks for tuning in for our shared reading video. And this one is for both your assignments on Thursday and Friday this week. So Thursday, May the 14th, and Friday, May the 15th. We are moving on to a new reading passage today. And this one is another nonfiction passage. It has to do with the life cycle. But the skill we're going to be working on is sequencing. So let me get that paper up to share with you, and you can grab yours, and we will go over this together. So the title of our page today is A Series of Events, The Water Cycle. And it tells us that we are going to sequence, and that sequence, when we sequence, it is the order in which something is done, and that we use order words to help us understand the order of events. And some of these include first, second, or third. Could also see then, later, soon after, before, after, and next, and then last, finally, and eventually. So if you remember from our writing back in our classroom, these were words we would use all the time, these transition words or order words that we always looked for. And if you remember, they don't have to be in exactly the same order. But they do give us an indication of when things are happening. So let's read this passage about the water cycle. Let me make it a little bit smaller so the whole passage fits. Okay, so here we go. Have you ever wondered what happens to puddles after a big rainstorm? Each bit of precipitation in our world goes through the water cycle. The water cycle is the movement of all the water on Earth. The water in, on, and above the Earth is always moving and changing states. It changes from liquid to vapor. It changes from vapor to ice and back again. The cycle continually repeats itself. First, the sun heats up the Earth's surface and draws water into the atmosphere. This process is called evaporation. This is what makes puddles disappear. The water evaporates, changing from a liquid into a gas. Then, as the water vapor rises into the sky, it cools down. It turns back into a liquid when it is in the clouds. This part of the water cycle is called condensation. After the clouds become heavy, precipitation falls. It falls as rain, snow, hail, or sleet. Sometimes precipitation can fall in heavy amounts. This can cause flooding and problems for people and animals on Earth. Mountainous areas, places that typically have snow, experience melting when the temperatures rise. The snow melt runs down towards sea level. As the runoff reaches lower elevations, it can end up in lakes and rivers, eventually leading to the ocean. This part of the process is called collection. Water is collected in different places on the earth. It can be absorbed back into trees and plants. It can return to lakes, rivers, and oceans. The water can freeze into snow, ice, or glaciers, depending on the climate. The water cycle is a system in nature that is constantly moving. The steps always occur in the same order, and the cycle always repeats itself. So in reading that, I saw some sequencing words. So I saw first, and then, after, and even as right there. Okay, so what's in the bottom part of this section? It wants you to complete the chart with details from this text that show the correct sequence of events in the water cycle. So we see that we're going to have a first, next, after that, then, and finally. Now we are sequencing these events. So these words right here are our sequence words. They most likely are not the same words that show these events in the passage. We need to be able to pull those out. So we are going to have 5 different events that to sequence about the water cycle. Now I do remember seeing first. So that one's pretty easy. But our box isn't that big, and there are a lot of words here in this paragraph that's explaining the first thing that happens. So you're going to need to put that into your own words. Excuse me. So it says first, the sun heats up the Earth's surface and draws water into the atmosphere. This process is called evaporation. This is what makes puddles disappear. The water evaporates, changing from a liquid into a gas. Okay, so I think that evaporation part is important. I think this would be a great first sentence, that water evaporates, changing from a liquid into a gas. So something along those lines we could write in our first event. And then what happens next? Well, I didn't highlight any next or see any next in our passage, but I do know that then is another way to show a second event. So if we read this passage, then as the water vapor rises into the sky, it cools down. It turns back into a liquid when it is in the clouds. This part of the water cycle is called condensation. So we could say that the water vapor rises into the sky and cools down. That would be the next thing. And then what happens after that? Well, if we keep reading in the next paragraph, I see that after. So that's giving me a clue. I think that my next event will be in here. After the clouds become heavy, precipitation falls. It falls as rain, snow, hail, or sleet. Sometimes precipitation can fall in heavy amounts. This can cause flooding and problems for people and animals on Earth. Mountainous areas, or places that typically have snow, experience melting when the temperatures rise. The snow melt runs down towards sea level. Well, the most important information out of that paragraph, I believe, is that the clouds become heavy and precipitation falls. We need to remember that precipitation is rain, snow, hail, or sleet. So for after that, clouds become heavy and precipitation falls. Then what happens? We could look at our next paragraph about the runoff. Reread that paragraph. What is the then event? And then finally, it's not very specific what the finally is, but our evidence is right in here to figure that out. Once you have that written in, you are all done with your reading work for this week. So nice job, guys. If you have questions about this, be sure to pop into our Zoom meeting. I hope you learned something about the water cycle and had a good review on using those sequence words. All right, I'll see you again soon. Bye.